The war broke out late February, right, 2022. And we knew that in September of 2022, there would be hundreds of thousands of Ukrainian kids joining the Polish school. So we really wanted to launch the platform by the beginning of July. What happened in Poland was incredible. The general response of the public in Poland was incredibly supportive towards the refugees. There will be literally hundreds of thousands of Poles driving to the border, picking up people, bringing them home. We managed to establish a partnership quickly with Save the Children. We've had more than 6,500 students who completed the courses. We have 20,000 registered users, which is quite a big, substantial amount. Around 10% of the children refugee population in Poland. These kids are the ones who can't afford. They don't have the money. Not receiving language education means they stay at home, don't go to Polish school, extreme isolation. And after a year, even the government has no idea what's going on with these kids. Then wherever we go, I'm like, okay, we're an NGO, but you guys don't sound like an NGO. Obviously, there are downsides, right? If you're like putting all your attention to building a startup, your end goal is, well, you might do an IPO or other exit. One downside of building an NGO in a professional way is just to cut seven. The need is huge. No one is solving this problem in a scalable way. Actually change lots of lives. And it's like super fulfilling.
Before we dive in, I want you to share why did I start the Edge of Impact podcast in the first place. Ever since winning a WSA award in 2016 myself, I have been fascinated by this community of change makers who are using digital technology to make this world a teeny better for all of us. So the Edge of Impact is my way of helping these change makers to amplify their impact. And therefore, I invite you to help me on this mission by sharing these podcasts, telling about the stories to your friends, your colleagues, your relatives, because that's how we can scale and make their impact amplified all around the world. Thank you. And now let's go to the episode.
Michael, tell me, what led you to start doing what you're doing? What insight? What was the inspiration?
Sure. We ran 2 educational startups before we started Language Supp. 2 of them successful. And when the full-scale invasion of Russia on Ukraine broke out, we knew that there was a huge problem coming, which is the problem of millions of people flowing into Poland. And that lots of research shows that the biggest obstacle to successful integration of refugee populations is the language barrier. It's been proven in various refugee contexts is like one of the number one things, right? You don't speak the language, especially as a child, very difficult to continue education. So we had both the knowledge already. We knew how to do educational, technological sort of thing. Mm-hmm. And there was a huge sort of external force. And we thought, okay, we know how to do it. There's a big problem. Let's see if we can solve a bit of this problem. Mm-hmm. And we did.
And for whatever it's worth, but I can definitely testify that, yes, you're right about the refugees not integrating because of language, because in my history with WSA, for the last, don't want to count how many years, we had so many refugees starting language platforms specifically addressed for refugees because they identify that as the biggest obstacle to integrate, or whatever it's worth, but it's been confirmed from many winners of WSA and European Young Innovators.
Sure.
But you said we. Who is we?
Yes, me and my co-founder, Adam, he's the CTO of Language Supp. So we were the ones who started it, and then we formed a new team for this project. We hired 10 people in total who are working on it, and we found 30 teachers who are teaching. And yeah, that was nice.
Sounds like all piece of cake. Oh, it just happened. We just hired. We just found. But I'm sure that there was a little bit more work.
Of course, it was.
Shine a light on that?
Sure. There was lots of work to begin with the fundraising, because the way it happened was the war broke out late February, right, 2022. And we knew that in September of 2022, there would be hundreds of thousands of Ukrainian kids joining the Polish school. So we really wanted to launch the platform by the beginning of July so that they can have 2 months of teaching before they join the school, which gave us around March, April, May, June. 4 months to start the thing, actually to build the platform, hire teachers, all of that. So that was quick. But we knew that we had to start with fundraiser, right? We had 4 months to basically put our strategy into place. So we started with fundraising, and we were lucky enough to be put in touch with the people who were organizing the humanitarian sector response in education in Poland, right? It was
That's all super, super quick. Like from you realizing that you want to do something about it. Like how long did that take for you to sit down? Okay, war broke out February.
that took us like 2 days,
Okay.
right? Because the initial thing, we're like, okay, like this is
You were
something.
feeling super like
Oh, yeah.
passionate to do something about like
Oh yeah, like this, what happened in Poland was incredible. Made me believe in Polish people again, because the general response of the public in Poland was incredibly supportive towards the refugees. There would be literally hundreds of thousands of Poles driving to the border, picking up people, bringing them home, right? And we were like, I could do this, but I think I have comparative advantage in the sense that I have skills, access to funding, people, so we can help in a slightly different way, right? So I never hosted a Ukrainian family at home. Instead, we started fundraising, and we managed to establish a partnership quickly with Save the Children, which is the biggest educational INGO worldwide, and we knew we could start building. And we were lucky enough that our vision was shared by people. We hired one, two, three, four people to start with. So like the core team. So a person responsible for product, a person responsible for communications, customer service, and the teacher network. So like four people, plus me as the CEO and then Adam as the CTO. And we built it. We launched on the 1st of July. And up to date, so it's been 2 years, more than 2 years, we've had more than 6,500 students who completed the courses. And it works. We meet like global educational standards because we had to work with Save the Children's team, who is like a global team of experts. There is no room for maneuvering. The courses have to be like super good. They have to meet all the educational standards. 92% of people who complete the courses, the children, they show significant improvement in their language proficiency. So it's big scale and the impact is deep.
Okay.
So it's good. It's good, although it's very difficult to continue it now because the model we built relies on humanitarian sector money. And we've raised $1.5 million for this. And this is the money we've spent. And it's difficult to keep on fundraising because humanitarian sector focus shifted.
Yeah.
The humanitarian crises in Poland, Romania, Moldova, caused by the influx of Ukrainian refugees, is just no longer there. It's not perceived as a humanitarian crisis anymore. Most of the INGOs moved out, most of the money moved out. But even if we are forced to shut it down, then we'll be super proud and happy of what we did. Because for these kids, and I think probably that's the reason why you say projects like that, projects helping refugees learn languages keep on popping up, even within WSA. I think one of the reasons why is that it's very difficult to find sustainable financing. Right?
But is it? Because I don't know, like in Lithuania, we have a lot of different demographics of the Ukrainians that are coming. So are you saying that you don't trust that the kids, Ukrainian kids will not, or their parents will not be able to fund the courses?
No, so I was thinking about the funding if you want to offer the courses for free. That's what I meant, right? That's what I meant. When it comes to courses that are paid for, then no, surely, yeah, there is a big market, although there is a competition already there in this market, right? For the last 2 years, we've been building a product based on humanitarian sector money. So within the niche of free Polish language courses online, we're by far the biggest, and we've got the best product, 100%. But when it comes to the commercial courses, I believe we have the best product. But they've spent the last 2 years building their sales strategy and marketing strategy. Yeah, the market is to some extent saturated, right? We're not operating alone, and these guys have been doing sales for the last 2 years. So it's not that obvious to make the switch from doing something for free to people than doing it commercially. When it comes to the team, they're like very happy to do it. They're very skillful, and we're able to do it. But when it comes to the market, it's challenging.
Potentially working with schools, because they're also like one of the biggest benefits probably goes to schools that
Yes,
kids
but
come to.
they don't have money to pay.
Okay.
Yeah. No, unfortunately, in Poland, schools don't have money to pay for such courses. That would be ideal for us. Working with government, local governments, or schools would be perfect.
Have you attempted any of those routes?
Yes, yes. But we've never, from day one, from day zero, we've been trying to work and talk with the government. But we've never succeeded in establishing something that would make him believe that we could sustainably continue this in the future with financial support from the government.
Okay. Business-wise, you had experience building platforms and running before. How would you compare your experience in Language Supp versus like what you've built before, like the speed of onboarding people, building technology, and the impact that it had? I agree with you.
Yeah, when it comes to logic of running the thing and setting it up, I'd say it's pretty similar. It's just a different metric that you're maximizing. And this metric, which is impact of people's lives, is a way nicer metric to maximize. And it's been professionally my two favorite years of professional life, right? Because we were lucky enough to have enough money to have an organization that actually does things like very professionally. Everyone is well paid. So everyone's
We were
motivated.
very impressed by your website when we were judging, and
Oh yeah, did you?
definitely.
You can see, right? And that's my CTO, Adam. He's like super good, and so it's lovely when you can do stuff like super properly, like a business, and that's always been our, from day one. We're like, okay, we want to do pro bono work, or we want to make it as professional as we'll be doing business. And I love it because also then you shine as well. So then whenever we go, I'm like, okay, we're an NGO, but you guys don't sound like an NGO. Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
But we are an NGO because you can help people in a professional way.
Yeah, and that's raising the standards of everyone.
Oh yeah, yeah. And I like that. I like that. Some people don't like us for it because we stand out in the sort of NGO scene. We're not a classical NGO.
Yeah, and we have so much of that resistance from within the sector, even though they should be learning and upgrading.
Yeah, although we've had lots of positive impact as well, especially from big NGOs. But yeah, it's definitely been a lovely journey. I could do this again. Obviously, there are downsides, right? If you're like putting all your attention to building a startup, your end goal is you might do an IPO or other exit. You're building a sellable organization. One downside of building an NGO in a professional way is just like, well, you can't sell it. But then it's good. Just like probably makes your motivation right in a way.
But what is motivating you to do it for free and being an NGO or finding ways to offer service for free? Like, where does that come from?
The need is huge. The need is huge. No one is solving this problem in a scalable way. And we actually change lots of lives. And it's like super fulfilling. It is extremely fulfilling. So over the last 2 years, even we had suggestions to do it commercially, but we weren't really that eager to, because for most of our students, the counterfactual is not receiving language education. Not receiving language education means they stay at home, don't go to Polish school, extreme isolation. And after a year, even the government has no idea what's going on with these kids. They're lost somewhere in the floods all around Poland. No one knows what's going on because they don't know the language, they don't go to school, right? So I think what motivates us is, and me, it's every day I have proof coming from feedback from the students that we are very needed. The service we provide makes a lot of sense and no one else is doing it.
And you believe that if you start charging, you will not actually, because you start competing with the businesses that have been there, you will not be able to attract that audience of children in need.
Not even because of that. It's just like lots of our users will not be able to afford it. Because if you turn into a commercial strategy and you need to sustain the team, you can't start paying teachers less. You need to maintain the quality, which means it costs quite substantial money. Not a lot of money, but it's an intensive course.
So if it's free on the user side, then you get more free out of the supply side, right?
I don't get the point.
As in, if you start charging the users, then you have to start paying completely different money to contributors.
No, because the teachers are fine, because everyone's getting paid well at Language Supp, right? So no one really needs more money just because we're doing it commercial, to be honest. Neither the teachers nor the team. It's more just about the fact that our base of students, we have 20,000 registered users, which is quite a big, substantial amount. Around 10% of the children refugee population in Poland. These kids are the ones who can't afford the courses, right? They're the ones who just can't afford the thing. They don't have the money because they're usually just with a single mom, and not even a single mom. It's just like dad's fighting the war, mom's in Poland with them. If mom is lucky enough, she's got a job. If she's not, then she doesn't. And they're counting every zloty, right? So yeah, it's just for these kids who are our like registered users, for them it will be largely impossible to pay.
What is your churn? How many students who enter actually finish?
It's around 25%. 25% are those who drop out. So 75% complete the course. And usually the dropouts are early on. There are a few dropouts later in the course. So usually the dropouts would be those who signed up, never showed up, or maybe signed up once. But then what we do is we often reopen the courses midway or signups. Obviously, it's not ideal, but then our claim is okay.
Okay.
It's better to give someone half a course than a whole course than no course. If we see a course group that has a large proportion of dropouts, because usually the distribution of dropouts isn't equal, right? You'd have groups where for some reason, I don't know, half of the group drop out. So this course would be reopened for signups, and then usually always we fill up the places in a matter of a day or two.
Are you doing them physically or online?
Everything's online. Everything's online.
So for online course, it's a super huge take-up rate. Yeah.
Actually,
Kind of like it's uncomparable.
Yeah.
Usually 3% is the not dropout versus.
Exactly, and it's what's even more interesting because when it comes to this data, it's incredible. Because we had around 20,000 registered users, right? And around 70% of those guys completed a full profile, like a full profile with a picture, with everything, lots of data. So like these users are super engaged. Like our email opening rates are at around 60%.
Wow.
Like mass mails to 20,000 people. Can you imagine?
You're collecting a lot of data actually about the users and all of it. Can you tell me of any interesting insights that you're getting from it? From whether like the usage data or the profile data or the combination of the two?
Sure. There are quite a few insights that we get from the data. The first one is that our users, so the children, Ukrainian children who are in Poland, they move a lot. And this is still a thing. Been 2 years, more than 2 years. 3 years after the war started, it's still a big thing. The mobility of our users is still a significant challenge because our users, so the children who learn with us, they would be in one place in Poland, move to another place in Poland, and go back to Ukraine, then maybe come back to Poland. And this is definitely something that is also of interest to many humanitarian agencies or the Polish government. So this is the data that we are sharing.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think such a big migration is happening? Of course, from Poland to Ukraine probably is justified, but within Poland as well.
I believe it's the number of Ukrainian refugees in Poland is very high. Millions of people came, lots of them stayed. And it's not that easy for these millions of people to start a new life, find a new job, find an apartment that is suitable, find a good school, especially, or kindergarten. It's quite difficult, right? Because the capacity has not been increased very much when it comes to labor market or the schools places, kindergarten places, but the number of people who need them increased a lot. So I think this would be a big part of the explanation, is that especially people who, in the beginning, many refugees from Ukraine would also migrate to smaller cities, smaller towns, rural areas, because many people, not only in big cities in Poland, many people in the smaller cities would just offer their flats, their houses for people to stay. And as the situation continues, people realize they might be staying in Poland for extended period of time. They would be migrating to bigger cities where there are more opportunities for jobs, where there is also a bigger Ukrainian community. So these are two explanations that come to mind.
Makes a lot of sense. And in terms of more qualitative impact, the stories that maybe resonated with you from the children who have learned on your platform, can you mention a couple?
Sure. These stories are probably the greatest way to keep myself and keep the team motivated, because when you do everything online in this humanitarian field of work, sometimes you do get detached from the people that you help, right? Because people become numbers in a sense that we just focus on publishing new courses, filling in the places on these courses, making sure that the attendance rate is high. And then, especially for me, at the sort of coordination level, I barely have any contact with people who we help. Also, these people speak Ukrainian. I don't speak Ukrainian, so I can't really talk with them. And sometimes it might feel like any other job, right? You're dealing with numbers, you're sending reports, you're calculating budgets. And I think it's just really important to be connected with these stories, to understand what actually is going on, because that's where the real meaning of this kind of work lies. And yes, our customer service team gathers individual testimonials, or more like stories of people telling their journey with us. And after operating for more than 2 years, some of these stories are amazing because we have a large number of students who stayed with us for 2 years. So they completed 3 long courses. They're completing their 4th one. We had kids who started not knowing any Polish, completed A1 level, A2, B1, now learning at B2 level. On top of this, we have cases when their moms are also learning with us, because we do offer courses for mothers as well. And these are really touching. It usually would be the moms writing messages telling us that they basically came to Poland in a great shock, in a great trauma, not being to communicate with their environment, not being able to communicate with the teachers or the school headmaster, basically not being able to live in the country. And then they learned the communication with us. They learned how to speak Polish with us, and now they've settled in. And this is exactly our theory of change. This is exactly why we started doing this, because we knew that the language barrier is the greatest obstacle for kids to continue education. And it's shown in lots of research, international research. If the kids don't know the language, their education will be interrupted. They will stay at home. They might not go to school. So when we write these, and it's often like that one of the customer service team members during our sort of daily meeting would just tell us, "Oh, by the way, there is this new story that someone sent. I just sent it on Slack. You guys take a look at it." And it is definitely one of the nicest moments in this work. It really is.
Nice. I believe that it's super rewarding to
Yeah.
actually hear and see the impact and the growth of it. I also know that you are very much caring about the quality of the courses. Can you tell me about the kind of course content and how you organize it and how it's different from not necessarily your competitors, but even different from the paid options of learning Polish language?
Sure. These courses are really good. I believe what we do is really good, but they weren't very good at the start. I mean, the first version, which we created the whole thing in more or less 3 months. So it was an MVP, but it was a very much needed MVP. So the rollout was super quick. But these courses were like average. And from the very beginning, we had a very strong motivation to keep increasing them. The motivation came from 2 sources, because on one hand, we wanted to provide as good a product as possible to the users, to kids who are learning, but also we were under sort of constant supervision of Save the Children, so this huge international NGO, and we were expected to meet the global standards in not only in education. So what I mean is, on one hand, we had to make sure, and we made sure that our courses align with the highest global foreign language learning standards. We gradually changed the course structure to align with this. So we increased the number of classes per week, the length of the classes, the size of the groups. Now everyone is learning 3 times a week for an hour and a half. It's quite intense. They learn for 22 weeks or 11 weeks at A1 level. But there is also much more to that, because education standards is one thing, but then the other thing is safeguarding issues. And this is something that the humanitarian sector is super serious about. And we've developed these quite elaborate structures when it comes to monitoring the safety and the well-being of kids. All the teachers are trained so that they can spot any weird behavior. Maybe they might spot the fact that some child is under some sort of pressure or under some sort of violence. And there is a strict obligation to anyone working in the project, including teachers, to report any suspicious things. And then any report there is a structure on how to investigate it. We investigate it together with Save the Children's team. So when it comes to how safe the kids are on the platform, it's really good. They're very safe. And it was an interesting journey, because I think the standards in the humanitarian sector are much higher than in the private sector, because it's a different level of scrutiny. It's also donors' scrutiny. And the third thing is the way we evaluate courses. And that, again, is interestingly coming from the humanitarian sector. There is a very strict format. It's called MIL, so monitoring, evaluation, accountability, and learning. These sort of 4 things are under one umbrella. And in each of these streams, we've implemented different mechanisms. So we're monitoring the courses on a daily basis. Everything's monitored, but we're also doing these special lesson sessions when we come and monitor the lessons. We do constant evaluation. We have numbers on everything that's happening during the classes, before the classes, after the classes, which enables us to control the process very well. So I can back myself in saying that we really do know what is going on. And thanks to this, we know whether it's working or it's not working, whether kids are safe or aren't safe. And then doing this online helps a lot. I think if we were to teach 6,500 kids offline in probably 100 different schools, super difficult to make sure that the quality of teaching and also the scrutiny of teachers when it comes to safeguarding is maintained. And here we have everything on the platform. We can enter any class, we can contact anyone instantly. So using an online platform to do it is a really good solution, I believe.
And in terms of the delivery of the class, is it all like hands-on, everybody logs in at the same time and then there is a teacher during the class, or is it more like self-learning and based?
No, it's all with the teacher. We have a separate product, a VOD platform. So we have the classes recorded as well. You can do it as self-instruction, but this is not our main product. So the main sort of thing that we provide is that these are courses with real teachers. So we have around 30 teachers who work with us. And yeah, each course works in a way that if you are a student, you would connect 3 times a week on it's a recurring class. So every week you connect with the same teacher, with the same group at the same time. And your teacher just conducts the class. Yes. And most of our teachers are running 2, 3, 4, 5 courses. So they teach quite a lot with us.
Was it difficult to find and onboard the teachers and now to sustain them?
No, so teachers are, and we've done other edutech projects for profit and profit in the past, teachers have always been the easier side of the story for us. And especially for this project, it was challenging to make sure that they all meet the standards. Yes, it's not that easy to verify how good someone is at teaching. It's quite a difficult process and you need to trust the teacher a bit, right? And then see if it works. But when it comes to finding the teachers itself, it wasn't that challenging because our sort of perfect teacher is someone who taught Polish as a foreign language in Ukraine before. So a Ukrainian person who teaches Polish as a foreign language. And because of the war, quite a few of these teachers either migrated to Poland or are just happy to earn some extra income. No, because even in the beginning, we had many more teachers because in the beginning, the model was a bit more chaotic. Teachers would usually teach one course each. I think at the peak, we had 60 teachers teaching. Having less teachers is definitely better. It's most of the teachers now have quite a few courses. They're very determined. And what they do with us is an important part of their daily work and their income. So having a smaller number of dedicated teachers now is a better model.
Quality over quantity, right? Usually
Yes.
wins everywhere.
Yes, that's correct.
And you mentioned that onboarding teachers was the easier side of the story. What was the most challenging side of Language Supp Ukraine so far?
2 things. One, I believe, is to maintain high class attendance. But this is not unique to us because it's a sort of very common story among any organizations providing free education of this sort. It works in this way on a psychological level. I believe that when you sign up to something that is free and you have the freedom not to use it, it's the motivation, especially when you're like a 13 or 14-year-old, decreases. So in the beginning, we had some problems with the class attendance and we had to increase the customer service team from 1 person in the beginning to 4 people now. And we just do a lot of direct contact with the kids. And this helps because when kids are absent, they don't go to class. They would always get a call from us and we just ask them, are you going to come back? Is everything fine? And sometimes it's easier for them to say, oh yeah, I was tired, I couldn't come, but now I'll be coming to classes. And the lesson attendance rate has increased a lot. And the second challenge was fundraising, or the sort of uncertainty when it comes to fundraising. Our project is very costly, so we need quite a lot of money to sustain it. And because of how the humanitarian sector works, the money is published or announced in these tranches, where these big institutional donors would direct some funds towards a specific country. And then within the country response, there are a few INGOs or UN agencies that distribute the money. And so even though we managed to sustain the project, all went well, but still every few months there would be writing proposals again and waiting for confirmation of the funds, which is always, it's just stressful from the founder and for the leader of the project because there are lots of people depending or counting on you. On one hand, the users, but also the team, right? 10 people working full time plus 30 teachers. It's 40 people who basically make their living out of Language Supp. So it's always a bit stressful. But we've been communicating openly with the team. The team always knew that it's in the beginning, we only had an agreement signed for 1 year, right? So people thought they were coming for 1 year. And we were lucky enough to keep it running for longer. But this was definitely a challenge. This emotional wise, it's the biggest challenge, I believe.
Another question that I wanted to come back to, maybe of something that you just said. You mentioned that you talk to the kids also. Your team, your customer support team is talking to the
Yes.
kids. So do you feel that you're not only providing the language learning, but you're also like providing some mental support, being there for the kids? Is there an element of that emotional support?
We don't do it, and that's on purpose. I believe that it's very important to know your core when you run things like this, when you run a startup or a sort of pro bono social enterprise. And I mean, that's the way I do things. I think it's important to know your core. And there's been a lot of discussions internally in our team where different team members suggested that we could provide other types of help. We did these internal sort of design thinking workshops, trying various tools to define if there is something else that we could add to the project. But in the end, we never decided to really do anything extra. The only thing that we ever did extra that was very different from our core was the VOD platform, because it really was just a separate project. It was like a professional video production with a set and everything, like a different kind of thing. But with this mental support things, we never really decided to do anything like that because on one hand, we're not qualified and this would require quite a lot of training. It's just a different type of help that others are providing. And if we start doing it in a way that if I allowed my customer service team to have these friendly chat with kids and maybe support them in this and that, then they might not have enough time to just complete all the work that needs to be done. And there's tons of work in customer service. The team is working super hard. So I am always trying to limit their engagement with individual kids because simply it is just not what we can do. And I just believe we need to know what you are changing and what others are changing. And I want us to focus solely on the language because in the language, I think we can make a big change. We're very well qualified. We have a good product. And in other areas, we're not qualified. So no.
Yeah, focus is one of the key learnings of startups. Know your core and focus. So
100%.
So that is kudos to you for sticking to it, really.
Be 6 years to get there.
Yeah, it takes practice. It's so easy to get distracted. Absolutely. And in terms of the kids' safety, you mentioned that you're encouraged by the donor organizations to constantly monitor. Did you have any cases of reported instances then the kids were not safe because of something in Ukraine or in Poland?
We don't have cases that the kids were. Very often, kids are unsafe in a sense that lots of our children are in Ukraine and they wouldn't come to class because there is bombing and they need to be in a shelter, or the teachers cannot conduct classes because the city where they live in is getting bombed. But this is not a safeguarding issue, so this does not get reported or investigated. That's just very sad. But then the cases that we did investigate were concerning mostly kids being rude to other kids. So it's this sort of thing that would also happen in a regular class, right? So yeah, we had cases where like a kid would be like a bully of a sort and maybe write some rude messages to other kids, things like this. And then, yeah, we investigate. It's quite a serious investigation. We need to talk with the moms and the teacher and other kids. And there's always some kind of action points at the end of investigation. But we haven't had cases where children would be under threat from things other than the war.
And in terms of that, maybe migration, but also you now mentioned that a lot of kids are usually in Ukraine while they're learning, not necessarily even physically in Poland. What is the current kind of situation? How many of your kids would you say proportionally are more physically in Ukraine versus Poland? Or is that something that is changing constantly and it's not really possible to determine?
No, it's changing, but for us, the large majority is in Poland, by far. I'd say 95% or 90%. So for us, a big majority is in Poland. Another sort of data that we do not have, but which we are trying to retrieve, is how many of these kids are enrolled in Polish schools and how many of them aren't. Because this is very important, because the kids who are enrolled into Polish schools, they get in touch with the Polish language either way. Sometimes they will not get a proper training at school because schools, they don't have enough resources, but they leave home, they go to school, they probably go and do some, play football, go to shop. When it comes to those kids who stay at home and are learning online with the Ukrainian government, these are the kids that we most worry about. And lots of organizations from the humanitarian area worry about, because these are the sort of the left behind kids that no one really knows what is going on with them. These would be kids who stay at home, get some classes online, and then don't even go to Polish school. They might not have any Polish friends. We don't know if they have any Ukrainian friends. The government doesn't really have any means to contact them. These kids are of especially high interest.
And what is the proportion of your students like that, would you say?
We don't know. We don't know because it's very difficult to get this data from the kids who aren't going to Polish schools, because there is an obligation for them to do. It's very difficult to retrieve this data because since September 2024, all Ukrainian kids who are in Poland, they have to go to Polish school. It's mandatory for them. So those who do not go to the Polish school are not that willing to give out this information. So it's not only our problem, it's like a problem of the whole humanitarian sector, of the government. It's very difficult to retrieve this data, to get kids to tell us
Yes,
that, yeah,
because
I'm not going to
yes,
Polish school, I'm breaking the law.
yeah, absolutely. And do you have any insight as to what are the reasons why they would choose not to go, or like their parents would choose not to let them go to the Polish school?
It's a model that at first was allowed by the Polish government, and many families at the beginning were learning in this way because they are not very open to begin a new life, right? They've just migrated to Poland, but they hope that the war would end soon, and it makes more sense to just continue education in the Ukrainian system and then go back to Ukrainian school. Going to Polish school is, to some extent, a way to acknowledge that you might stay in Poland for much longer than you would like to. And in the beginning, most kids would learn online with the Ukrainian government. Then gradually they would be signing up to Polish schools, because obviously they weren't even, the schools weren't ready to accommodate these 350,000 Ukrainian kids in the beginning. But then gradually a lot of these kids signed up, but some of them just stayed at home. And on one hand, it might just be easier for some teenagers just to just connect online, have a few classes, and you can do whatever. But also from the parents' perspectives, they might not be that willing to sign up the kids to schools when they're still thinking that they might be going back in a month or two.
Yeah, it's a very complicated and really so many different nuances play the part.
Yes.
Yeah. Going back to your founder learnings, is there anything from your experience? I'm sure that there is plenty, but if I would ask you to give advice from your own experience for people who are considering digital impact businesses, or are already embarking on this journey, what would be your advices?
I'd say number one advice would be, do not be afraid to go and talk with the biggest incumbents in the sector, because we were the only small organization and a relatively new organization in Poland that got substantial funds from the humanitarian sector. All the others are like the big NGOs that were in Poland for the last 30 years, sort of all big incumbent organizations. And we didn't have any personal connections. I wasn't connected with the humanitarian sector. It wasn't really through any handshakes. I presented our pitch for a project at a humanitarian sector meeting, and then Save the Children just reached out to us. And at first, it might be a bit overwhelming because all these big organizations are used to all the formalities, and there were lots of bureaucracy when you're dealing with these big organizations. But apart from that, if it wasn't for this, the project couldn't reach even 30% of its potential, really, because we weren't afraid to talk with the biggest guys in the field, because the biggest guys have the biggest experience, also the biggest money, and money is crucial. Yeah, I think in the private sector, like in startup world, it's much more obvious, right? You just go to VCs and they're meant to be talking with you. So the structure tells you what to do. In this sort of social entrepreneurship area, it's much less clear, because if you're a social enterprise or a sort of digital NGO and you focus on impact much more than on the profit, it's less obvious who to talk to. Very often the grants available on the market are relatively small. You cannot really develop with big organizations. So I think it makes a lot of sense to just talk with the biggest guys, the biggest global NGOs, the INGOs, the UN, because the level of innovation in this field isn't that high. There's lots of old school sort of types of activities. Being agile, young, and eager really helps.
Nice. That is a very good advice because, of course, money is a big issue for social impact companies, especially if they choose to not charge the primary stakeholders. What is next for Language Supp Ukraine?
Currently, we're shutting down because the money in Poland, the humanitarian sector in Poland is almost entirely gone right now. The last organization will be probably leaving Poland next month. That's the way humanitarian sector works. They come into a country for a response, and once the response is completed, then they leave. There has been a lot of uncertainty for the last year or so, more than a year, because global donors community or sector wasn't really clear in communicating whether the money for Poland would still be flowing. As of now, there's almost no humanitarian sector money coming to Poland. So yeah, Language Supp will just remain as the VOD platform. And yeah, we'll just embark on a new journey.
Do the kids who are learning know about this already?
Yeah.
Did you get many sad emails? And that's not great. So what is next for Michael then?
I don't know. I'll be taking a rest for a few months. And after this, I'll just start building something new.
Yes, that makes a lot of sense. So for the final question, if you had a magic wand and you could change anything within your area of activity or expertise or a field, what would that be?
Does it have to be with Language Supp, or is it like a personal question?
It's up to you, really. Whatever comes to your mind first. 2 seconds rule.
Second rule. I'd probably use the magic wand to go back, but more years back, 6, 7 years back, and test my ideas more quickly. I think back in the days, I was much more focused on product. And when we were building companies with my partner and friend, business partner, we would spend tons of hours in product and polishing product. And I think we lost quite a few opportunities to make good money and build good companies because we focused on product for too long and we just wouldn't go out to the market, or we just would put 80% of our time into polishing the product. And as we moved along on our journey, we definitely this ratio shifted. With Language Supp, we had no model, no product whatsoever. We just had an idea and 2 slides, and I just was going around the city, going on calls and telling people, let's do it. Give us money. We need to help these kids, and they will figure it out, the specifics. And yeah, here we are, tons of kids, a big project, great, amazing work. We help tons of kids. And if we did what we used to do back in the days, if we started coding and building the platform and creating the materials, then we'd end up with a very nice platform, no money to operate it.
And already too late, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, no, your story from the beginning, it's really a very good testament of how quickly you managed to put everything together and create such a huge impact. Do you think you will go back to impact businesses or need to take a rest and focus on the commercial businesses now? Potentially will impact.
I'll go commercial now. I think I'm mature enough now to build something big and commercial. I'll probably I hope to start fundraising for my next enterprise by the end of the year. I have a co-founder, a good friend of mine in New York, who we're working on several ideas. And yeah, I just hope to get a big round, build something huge, and have a lot of fun for the next 6, 8 years.
Awesome. And then you can invest whatever you want to, whatever impact you wish, right?
That'd be the idea, yes.
Yeah. Best of luck and thank you so much for the conversation.
Great, thanks, Aneta.
And with that, I want to invite you to share this episode with your network. The story of Language Supp Ukraine, where Michael and his team built a lifeline for 6,500 Ukrainian kids in just 4 months, shows us that anyone can turn crisis into clarity with bold and fast action. Amplifying the story isn't just about honoring their impact. It's about spreading a lesson we all need. When the moment demands it, you don't need a perfect plan, just the courage to start. On that note, next week I will be bringing you another story from the edge of impact, this time from a former WSA winner in 2022, all the way from Indonesia. Kevin and Swap Energy are literally revolutionizing two-wheeler motorcycles across Indonesia with their battery swapping service that has grown, to my belief, exponentially. See you next week.